The sun beat down mercilessly over the rugged hills of Kandahar, its rays turning dust to gold and shadows to whispers. Somewhere deep within that harsh Afghan terrain, a U.S. Army Special Operations unit moved with caution. Among them was Staff Sergeant Natalie Reyes, the team's lead sniper. Quiet, composed, deadly. She was known not just for her precision, but for her ability to disappear into the landscape, as if the desert had swallowed her by choice. It was supposed to be a routine recon. Drop in, gather intel, extract, but nothing in war stays routine. For long. Captain Eli Mercer, her spotter and the unit commander, had an uneasy feeling as soon as their boots hit the ground. Intel had been vague, the village too quiet, satellite scans showed movement, but heat signatures flickered like ghosts, the kind of eerie calm that felt like a trigger waiting to be pulled. They moved through the narrow alleys of the abandoned village when the first shot cracked the silence. It wasn't random, it was precise. Their rear guard went down instantly. Then came the mortar, shaking the ground beneath their boots. Dust clouds erupted, screams echoed. The ambush was swift, overwhelming. Natalie, perched on a crumbled rooftop, with her M4A5 sniper rifle, scanned the chaos. Through her scope, she saw them insurgents. At least 2 dozen, some disguised as shepherds, others emerging from trapdoors. The team had walked right into a kill box. Backtrack now, form up on the east wall. Mercer's voice barked through the calms, thick with urgency. But even as they regrouped, bodies were falling. Natalie picked off 3 hostiles from over 500 yards, unblinking, calm, efficient. But ammo was running low, and the unit was being boxed in. A second blast separated Natalie from the rest of the team, throwing her off her perch and into a narrow alleyway. Her headset cracked in her ear. The last thing Mercer heard before static took over was her strained voice. I'm hit, don't. Wait for me. And then silence. When the Blackhawk finally arrived 2 hours later, it was too late. The enemy had scattered. 7 men were recovered, 6 dead, 1 barely breathing. No sign of Natalie. No blood trail. No rifle. Not even her dog tags. She was declared missing in action. No body. No answers. Just an empty space where a soldier used to be. Back at the base. Mercer refused to accept it. She's out there, he told command. Natalie Reyes doesn't go down without a trace. But the military had its procedures. After 90 days with no confirmed contact, her status changed to presumed Kier. A ceremony was held. A flag folded. Her mother accepted a medal and a carefully worded letter. No one questioned it, except Mercer. Over the years, rumors swirled among field operatives. Whispered accounts of a female sniper taking out high-value targets in unstable regions. No affiliation, no trace. Locals in remote areas spoke of a ghost woman who never missed, the kind who would shoot the rifle, then vanish into the sand. Most dismissed it as wartime legend. Others, like Mercer, kept wondering, who survives a war like that, disappears for a decade, and resurfaces only in myths. He kept her file on a private drive, locked behind 4 levels of encryption. Not because he expected her to return, but because a part of him had never stopped believing she would. Then, on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday morning, that belief was shaken back to life. In a remote communications post on the Iraq-Syria border, a strange transmission flickered across a secure frequency buried in static, fragmented and nearly lost. It carried only a few lines of code, but for those who knew what to look for, it was unmistakable. A sniper's signal, Natalie's signal. And with that, the ghost was no longer just a story. She was reaching out. The message came in at 04 to 3 hours. At first, the night shift analyst at the remote intel post thought it was just noise interference from a sandstorm flaring up over the Iraq-Syrian border. But when he ran the static through the decryption filter, patterns emerged. Not words, not coordinates, but something more subtle, timed pulses, like a heartbeat masked in chaos. He flagged it as a level 3 anomaly. It should have been ignored, but, by chance, the alert was routed to a desk in Qatar where Captain Eli Mercer was now stationed under a quiet intelligence assignment, far from the front lines. When he read the decrypted string, he froze. The signal wasn't random. It was a sniper's wind call algorithm used only in old-school scope calculations, outdated, obsolete, except not to him. Natalie Reyes had invented that exact calculation. Style, Mercer knew. He had memorized it 10 years ago during missions in the hills of Helmand. No one else used those numbers in that sequence, no one alive. He stared at the terminal, hard hammering. The transmission was short, untraceable, sent via a burst satellite relay. rooted through dead zones, sloppy enough to suggest urgency, precise enough to suggest skill. It wasn't a call for help. It was a signature. She was alive. For the first time in years, Mercer felt the ground shift beneath him. Something long buried, the guilt, the frustration, the helplessness began to surface. He forwarded the signal to command. They dismissed it. Probably enemy mimicry, one officer scoffed. Old data spliced to bait you. Mercer argued. Hard, you don't understand. This isn't mimicry. This is Natalie. This is her. But the higher-ups had heard this from him before. A decade of grief had, in their eyes, made Mercer obsessed. His insistence had derailed his career, cost him promotions, and earned him a reputation for clinging to ghosts. Still, Mercer couldn't let it go. That night, while reviewing the signal again in his quarters, he cross-referenced recent satellite activity in the region, specifically sniper incidents. There had been several unexplained kills near the border targets, taken out with surgical precision from extreme distances. No confirmation on shooter, no video, only clean bodies and confused survivors. Most chalked it up to drone strikes or lucky resistance fighters. But Mercer recognized the pattern. Wind direction, kill distances, body placement, single shots always to the head, through cover, across, shifting terrain. They were too clean, too precise, too familiar. This was Natalie's hand, he knew it. Digging deeper, he found a field report out of Al-Hasaka. A convoy of warlords ambushed en route to a black market weapons meet. 5 dead, none wounded. A woman in a keffiyeh was seen watching from a distant rooftop. When troops approached, she was gone. No witnesses, no trace. Mercer leaned back in his chair, his mind reeling. What the hell had she been doing all this time? Surviving, hiding, hunting. He remembered the last time he saw her covered in blood, shouting through comms, telling him to leave her behind. The guilt never left him. The what-ifs haunted him every day. And now, a decade later, she'd surfaced. But it wasn't just about Natalie anymore. Something bigger was happening. These attacks weren't random. The targets were connected arms dealers, rogue agents, ex-contractors turned mercenaries. Someone had a list, and someone was crossing names off. Mercer made a decision. No more sitting behind monitors. No more waiting for command approvals that would never come. He filed emergency leave paperwork. Quiet, unremarkable. But he wasn't going home. He was going to Syria. To find her. And maybe finally to understand why Natalie Reyes had come back from the dead only to become a ghost. Syria was a mess, fractured, violent, unpredictable. Cities were reduced to bones, and loyalties shifted like sand dunes in the wind. The perfect place for someone who wanted to disappear, or hunt. Captain Eli Mercer stepped onto Syrian soil, using a false identity, his face hidden under a local trader's scarf, his passport scrubbed clean by an old friend in the CIA's gray zone. No official sanction, no backup, just one man chasing a ghost with a sniper's signature. The city of Deir ez-Zor had become a crossroads for smugglers, warlords, and former government operatives looking to profit from chaos. And among the whispered rumors floating through the souks and crumbling mosques was one name, Al-Ruha, the ghost woman. They said she never spoke, that she moved through towns like a phantom, appearing on rooftops when warlords passed through, disappearing before soldiers could even raise a rifle. One said he saw her sit atop a water tower for hours, unmoving, like a statue in the wind until a convoy appeared. Then came the shot, one, clean, precise, and she was gone. Mercer's heart twisted every time he heard those stories. It wasn't just wishful thinking anymore. He knew her. He started mapping the kills. 6 major strikes across a 200-mile stretch. The kill distances were increasing. The angles were more complex. She was evolving. And the targets, they weren't random. Each one had links to a black market arms syndicate that had exploded after the U.S. withdrawal. A syndicate tied to Operation Torchlight, the mission that had gotten Natalie's team ambushed 10 years ago. She wasn't just surviving. She was on a mission. Then came the trap. Mercer joined a humanitarian convoy undercover, passing near a known weapons smuggling route. They were flagged by a local contact for safe passage, but something felt wrong. Too quiet, too easy. Halfway through the canyon, gunfire erupted. Ambushed. Mercer dove for cover, his pistol drawn. The aid worker screamed as bullets pinged off the armored vehicles. Dust clouded everything. He saw one insurgent taking position on a ridge, lining up a kill shot. Then, a single pop echoed from far off. The insurgent's head snapped back. Another sniper. Mercer's breath caught. He watched, stunned. as 3 more gunmen fell in rapid succession, each hit between the eyes from over 800 yards. Whoever was shooting was operating from impossible range and had perfect visuals in a dust storm. A miracle. Or Natalie. He scrambled to the back of the truck, scanning the high ridges. Through the swirl of sand and chaos, he saw it, a silhouette, small, still, poised with a long-barreled rifle, keffine wrapped tightly around the lower half of the face, sunlight glinting off the scope. She held her position for just a second longer, then melted backward into the rocks. Gone. Mercer shouted into the comms, "Cease fire, friendly overwatch on the ridge." No one believed him, but he knew. That form, that calm under fire, that signature shot. She was watching. She had saved him. That night, under the cover of darkness, Mercer slipped away from the convoy and headed toward the ridge. He didn't sleep. He waited until morning, studying the terrain. He found the perch, an old Soviet radio tower, partially collapsed. There were signs of recent activity: dried food, a spent casing, an oil-slicked cloth for cleaning, and etched into the metal wall, scratched by knife or bullet, were 3 words: "I never left." Mercer felt something swell in his chest: grief, relief, rage. He didn't know what to feel, but now it was real. No doubts, Natalie Reyes was alive. She was armed, and she wasn't done yet. The tower had been empty for days. Mercer knew it. Still, he waited. At dawn, a shadow moved in the distance, small, deliberate steps across broken ground. The figure was wrapped in a desert pattern. Keffine, rifle slung low, boots silent over sand and rubble. She was a ghost, just as they said. But the moment her eyes locked on Mercer's from across the ruins, she froze. Mercer stood slowly, his hands visible, unarmed. "Natalie," he whispered. She didn't move. "You're alive." Still silence. She raised her rifle, not to shoot, but as a warning. She was judging him, reading his face like a battlefield map. "You shouldn't have followed me," she finally said. Her voice was low, dry like sand. It had been so long since he'd heard it, but it was unmistakable. "You saved my life yesterday." "I wasn't saving you," she replied flatly. "I was killing them." She stepped closer, still cautious. Her face was older, lined, tan, hardened by years of sun and blood. Her eyes, once sharp with energy, were now hollow, feral. He swallowed. "I thought you were dead." "I was." Her words hit him like a bullet. She passed him, ducking into the remains of the old radio station tower. It had been turned into a base of sorts, maps pinned to walls, notes scribbled in a code only a sniper would understand, names, coordinates, strike pots. It wasn't a hiding place, it was a war room. Mercer stepped inside, hesitant. "You've been doing this alone?" She didn't answer. She picked up a rusted kettle, poured water into a tin cup, and sipped. Mercer's eyes scanned the room. Her rifle was well kept, the same old M408A5 from Kandahar, modified, but unmistakable. Her scope had new glass, likely stolen from a fallen contractor. Beside it sat a notebook, weathered and filled with sketches of kill zones, movement patterns, and faces. "The kill list, Operation Torchlight," he said, finally understanding. "That's what this is about." She nodded, slowly, quietly. "They sold us out. You knew that, didn't you?" His jaw clenched. "I suspected, but I couldn't prove anything. Not then." "I could," she said, "and I am." Her finger tapped the list. 7 names, 6 crossed out. Mercer stared at the last name: Colt Rourke, a former CIA field operative turned private arms broker, now holed up in a fortress-like compound outside Amman, Jordan. Rourke had vanished from official U.S. records a decade ago, but Natalie hadn't forgotten him. "He's the one who gave the order," she said. "He told the locals we were coming. He left us to burn so he could finish a weapons deal, and you're going to take him out." She turned to him, deadly calm. "I've waited 10 years for the shot, and now I have it." Mercer stepped closer. "Natalie, if you do this, there's no going back, no reintegration, no military pardon. You'll be hunted." She almost smiled. "I've been hunted for a decade. Doesn't bother me anymore." He shook his head. "There has to be another way." She stepped closer too, eyes burning. "You think this is vengeance? This isn't personal anymore. Every one of them, every name on that list, they've kept dealing in blood. Arms to militias, warlords, cartels. I'm not erasing the past. I'm cleaning up the present." He looked at her, truly looked. She wasn't the soldier he'd last seen on the battlefield. She was something else now. Purpose had replaced fear. Conviction had buried grief. He exhaled. "Then let me help you, one last time." Her eyes softened, for just a second, then she turned back to the maps. "We leave tonight. Bring only what you can carry, And just like that, the mission was back on, together. The desert wind screamed against the battered windows of the ruined tower as night fell. Inside, under a single flickering lantern, Natalie spread out her final map. Every wrinkle on the paper seemed etched into her face, lines of time, scars. Of memory, her fingers traced the route from Syria to Jordan, then circled a heavily fortified zone outside Ammon. "That's Rourke's compound," she said, voice steady. "Private security, ex-special forces, at least 2 drones, and a kill zone out front the size of a football field. He's not hiding, he's daring someone to come." Mercer studied the layout. Suicidal frontal approach, only way in is from the east cliff. She nodded. "And there's only one shot." He looked over at her sniper rifle, resting beside her like an old friend. It was worn but lethal, just like her. "You've tracked all 6 names?" he asked. She turned to her notebook. The list was scrawled in sharp, clean letters. Major Lennox, shot in Lebanon. Sami Al-Kawari, executed in a moving vehicle outside Mosul. LT. Gary Wilkes, found dead in Dubai. No fingerprints on the round. Or Harkness, body dumped in the Euphrates. 1 shot to the head. Klaus Rademacher, killed during a staged raid in Aleppo. Vikram Saad, eliminated in Karachi from 1,100 yards. Colt Rourke, pending. Mercer stared at the pattern. All of them part of Operation Torchlight. Natalie sat against the wall, her eyes distant. "Everyone, they knew we were walking into a trap. They made the deal with the arms cartel, sold us out for a prototype weapons cache. We were just the cleanup team, disposable. And when the mission failed, they buried it." She nodded. "They left my team to die, left me. I watched my brothers bleed out on sand while they made millions." Mercer lowered his head. "We were soldiers, we followed orders. Not anymore," she said. "This is my war now." He understood. The pain, he'd lived with it too. But while he'd buried it beneath bureaucracy and silence, she had turned hers into fire. Not revenge, precision, purpose. Still, this mission, it wasn't just about finishing a list. "You've been out here alone for a decade, Natalie," he said gently. "You don't have to carry this weight anymore." She looked at him with a kind of calm resolve that didn't ask for permission. "It's not weight, Eli, it's clarity." He couldn't argue. She had become something the military couldn't understand. Not a rogue, not a traitor, but a consequence, a reckoning. "I'll be your spotter," he finally said. One last time. She didn't thank him. She didn't smile. She simply passed him a folded map and a radio. "Be on the East Ridge before sunrise," she said. "He leaves for his morning patrol at 0600. That's the window. We hit it or we lose him forever." Mercer stared at her a moment longer, absorbing the full measure of what she had become. She wasn't angry. She wasn't broken. She was focused. As he turned to leave the outpost and prepare their gear, he paused in the doorway. "What happens after?" Natalie didn't look up from her rifle. She adjusted the scope slowly, then said, "There is no after." And just like that, the woman listed as Mia for 10 years returned to her perch. Tomorrow, she would take the shot she'd been waiting for a decade to make. The Jordanian dawn came quietly. The desert's breath was still, and the sky shimmered in bands of violet and pale gold. It was the kind of morning that gave the illusion of peace until you looked closer, until you saw the heat shimmer on the ridges, the glint of a drone's lens catching early sun, the faint crunch of boots in gravel where they didn't belong. From her concealed perch atop the eastern ridge, Natalie lay prone, her body molded into the rock, cloaked in sand-toned camouflage. Beside her, Mercer adjusted the spotter scope, speaking only when necessary. "Winds. Light from the west. 3 knots. Target schedule holding. We've got 10 minutes. Natalie's breath was even. Her gloved fingers rested lightly on the trigger housing. 10 years of obsession, of hunting, of surviving in silence boiled down to this moment. A single shot, 1 name left, and no margin for error. She exhaled through her nose. Down below, the compound buzzed with routine. Colt Rourke's private militia rotated their morning patrols like clockwork for men per rotation, 2 armored trucks, and a reconnaissance drone making lazy circles overhead. But Rourke himself, predictable, he always walks alone to the perimeter before 0600. Natalie whispered, "Thinks it clears his mind." "That's the window." Mercer checked his watch. 3 minutes. Her eye remained locked to the scope, even at 900 yards. Rourke's private villa was clearly visible through her Leupold scope, modified for desert shooting, windage calibrated for dust movement. She'd done this 1,000 times in her mind. She knew the terrain, the angles, the bullet drop. But still, her muscles were stone. No tension, No excitement, only precision, movement below. A man in a khaki vest exited the compound's double doors, tall, broad-shouldered, graying beard, unhurried. The guards gave him space. He walked toward the outer fence, hands behind his back. His morning ritual. It's him. Mercer confirmed. Range 902 yards. Elevation difference 37 feet. Humidity steady. Natalie adjusted the scope, feathered the dial with a slow twist. Her crosshairs settled on his chest, then glided upward. The man stopped to light a cigar. He leaned on the railing, taking in the view of nothing but sand and stone. Natalie lined up the shot between his eyes. "This isn't just a bullet," she murmured. "It's truth. Send it." Her finger squeezed the trigger. The rifle barked a dry, sharp crack that echoed across the ridge like thunder in a vacuum. Through her scope, she watched Rourke's head snap back, then his body crumple soundlessly to the ground. A clean shot, instant. His cigar rolled from his hand and landed in the dust. Panic erupted. Guards shouted, radios buzzed, alarms blared, trucks peeled out from the gates, and the drone spun wildly, trying to locate the shooter. But the ridge was already empty. Natalie and Mercer moved as one, sliding down the opposite side of the hill into a dried-out ravine. They moved swiftly, silently, melting into the terrain. The extraction plan wasn't elaborate, it didn't need to be. They would vanish just as she always had. No footprints, no signature, just a body left behind and questions no one would answer. 20 minutes later, they sat beneath a collapsed arch of stone, breathing hard, the adrenaline finally slowing in their veins. Mercer looked at her, sweat dripping down his temple. "It's done." Natalie said nothing for a while. She just stared at the horizon. Then finally, she whispered, "It should feel like something, doesn't it?" She met his eyes. "No, it just feels quiet." For her, this was never about satisfaction, not even closure, just the end of a line, the final tick on a list that had started in blood and ended with silence. "Where do you go now?" Mercer asked. She gave a slight shrug. "Anywhere but home." And just like that, the woman once left behind disappeared once more, this time on her own terms. The desert went silent again. The dust from the shot still floated in the air, shimmering in the sunlight like ash from a funeral pyre. Down below, Colt Rourke's body was a speck, a man who had controlled millions and weapons and bloodshed, now just a broken form in the sand. One bullet had unraveled 10 years of secrets, buried corruption, and a conspiracy no one would ever officially acknowledge. Natalie Reyes packed her rifle with mechanical precision. She didn't look back, not once. Mercer followed her lead, double-checking their escape route as boots scrambled across the far valley. Alarms wailed from the compound below. The drone circled high, confused and blind. The guards searched the wrong ridge entirely, shouting into radios, waving their rifles at empty cliffs. "They'll realize soon," Mercer said. "We've got 10 minutes tops, more than I need," Natalie replied, adjusting her keffiyeh. Her face was already half hidden again, receding into myth. They slipped through the ravine, then into a dry riverbed. Their footsteps vanished in loose gravel. They moved without speaking. They had done what they came to do. There was no celebration, no embrace, no promise of peace. As they reached the waiting motorcycle buried beneath a tarp of brush, Mercer paused. "We could turn this in. The data you gathered, those logs, the proof Rourke was working with rogue CIA cells, the kill orders, the money trails, we could expose it all." Natalie shook her head, calm. "And what happens next? Congressional hearings, press conferences, more names buried while others rise." She looked away. "I didn't do this to fix the system, Eli. I did it so my team wouldn't stay ghosts. So their story had an ending. You gave them more than that," Mercer said. "You brought justice." But Natalie didn't smile. She handed him a drive. "It's all on here. Give it to someone who still believes in paper trails. I'm done with it." He took it slowly, slipping it into a waterproof pouch. He understood now this wasn't just closure. It was disappearance, final and complete. "You're not going back with me, are you?" "No," she said. "They'll call you a traitor." "They already did." He wanted to argue, but there was no fight left in either of them. Only a quiet understanding that some wars never end with medals. The motorcycle kicked to life. She slung her pack over her shoulder and climbed on. For the briefest second, she looked back at him, not with warmth, but with something close to peace. "I'll signal you when I'm clear," she said. Then she was gone. Mercer stood there, a long while after the dust settled, staring at the empty horizon. No sound but the wind and the faint echo of a shot that had been 10 years in the making. Back in Ammon, Rourke's death was spun as a terrorist assassination. News cycles barely touched the truth. A high-value security contractor killed by extremists. No further comment. The data Natalie left behind, however, told a different story. Mercer sent it to a journalist he trusted, someone who wouldn't flinch. Within weeks, headlines whispered of old operations gone wrong, names connected to unauthorized weapons deals, questions that would never be fully answered. But no one could trace the leak, and no one could trace the sniper. Months later, in a quiet bar outside Kabul, a retired special ops captain swore he saw a woman in a keffing watching from a rooftop, rifle case by her side, eyes scanning the street like a sentinel. He looked again, and she was gone. They say she's still out there, he told the bartender. The one who disappeared came back and put justice in the dirt. The bartender poured another drink. Some ghosts never rest. Mercer would have agreed, but by then, even he wasn't sure if Natalie Reyes had ever truly come back. A year passed. In the quiet corners of the military world, where secrets lived longer than people, the name Natalie Reyes remained officially etched on a black stone wall in Arlington, engraved beneath MIA presumed Kier. There was no footnote, no addendum, no truth. Captain Eli Mercer stood before that wall one rainy afternoon, the same day he received his discharge papers. 10 years of silence, of buried truth, and of chasing ghosts had brought him here to a name carved in stone, and a war no one remembered right. He laid a single brass casing at the base of the wall. She made it count, he whispered. The data Natalie had handed him had done its damage, quietly, fatally, for mid-level officials resigned, to private military firms shut down. A Pentagon audit vanished mid-investigation. No public trials, no television coverage, just a quiet purge, the kind that spoke volumes in the silence. Mercer never spoke on the record. He disappeared from public life soon after, bought a cabin near the Rockies, took up teaching long-range marksmanship at a private veterans center, quiet, unnoticed. Until one winter morning, a package arrived on his doorstep. No return address, just a hard case box, military green. Inside, wrapped in black cloth, was a rifle scope, his old one but newly modified, sleek, perfect, engraved on the side, in barely visible script, "See without being seen." He smiled and closed the box. Word began to spread again, not in the press, but in whispers, across forward operating bases, sniper training ranges, and CIA safehouses. Stories of a woman never seen, never heard, taking out a known arms smuggler in Niger, a drug kingpin in Mexico found dead from a shot that pierced bulletproof glass, a terrorist convoy in Yemen wiped out by a single shooter, operating outside of all known jurisdictions. No nation claimed her. No country denied her. They simply called her the Ghost. Among elite snipers, her name was myth, a legend passed to recruits. During training, she waits 7 days without sleep. She counts the heartbeats between each breath. She never misses. Most thought it was nonsense, a story to push rookies harder, to remind them that somewhere out there, perfection exists. But some believed. In a sniper school outside Fort Bragg, a young woman named Cara Santiago opened her locker to find a sealed envelope. Inside was a folded schematic for wine drift calculation, one rarely used, one thought obsolete, and scribbled beneath it, "You'll need this when everything else breaks." Cara asked the instructors who had left it. No one claimed it, but when she opened the base of her locker, she found a custom scope tucked inside, lightweight, impossibly balanced. On the underside, she never spoke of it, but her kill scores surpassed records, and when asked how she made certain shots under extreme conditions, she always said the same thing: "I just see what others don't." Back in the desert, beneath foreign stars, Natalie Reyes stood on a rocky plateau, watching another convoy through her scope. Her rifle was newer now, but the ritual remained the same: breathe, watch, wait. She didn't do this for revenge anymore, or even justice. She did it because sometimes the world didn't need another soldier. It needed a ghost.